Hey y'all, it's Bryne here from Going Commando. Before we get to this week's episode, I want to tell you about Anchor.fm. Now, Anchor.fm is how we distribute this very podcast, Going Commando. And when we were starting the show, James and I did a lot of research to try to figure out the best way to get this podcast out into the world, and Anchor.fm was the clear winner. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. First of all, it's absolutely free. Second of all, there are creation tools within the website that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can also make money from your podcast, which is what we're doing right now, with no minimum listenership. It is everything you need to make a podcast in one place. It could not be simpler. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, certainly you can too. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I ate your pal Dickface.
Looking for a few more scars on his face. James McDonald, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Chicks dig scars, so it's always a good thing to add a couple if you can.
Yeah. I mean, is that still true? Do you think, or?
Dude, look at Jason Momoa, man. That guy's got that crazy eyebrow scar.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? That's a little different, I think, because it just makes his eyebrow look cool. You know?
The thing is, he legit said that before he got that scar, he had trouble getting roles because people thought of him as the pretty boy. After he got in that fight, got that eyebrow scar, like he started getting more roles. He credits that as like the spark of his career.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So
I
he's
didn't know
like
even until a couple weeks ago.
So he's more gritty now, and as a result, was
so.
able to play Aquaman, for example.
I think it definitely makes him look a little bit more gritty. Like, if you look at it, I was looking at a picture somebody posted of him back, like, when he started. He was on Baywatch, Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looks like this, real, like, fit, like, kind of, like, got, like, a really generic haircut.
Right.
Like, he kind of looks like insert generic pretty guy. So, I think he's right. It definitely gives him a little bit more, Can you hold on one moment, pause?
Yeah.
The dog
no worries, man.
is underneath the table here, and he farted. And his farts are the worst thing in the world for such a little dog. Like, it legit smells like death coming out of his asshole. And
no, I believe it. I don't know what it is about tiny pets, but they have the most powerful smelling flatulence that I think I've ever experienced.
And he doesn't think anything of it. He'll like get his butt right up next to you and just like, dude, it's bad. It's really bad. But like, I literally thought when he farted underneath the table here, I was like, man, did he just shit under the table? I'll kill him. I swear I'll kill him.
That would be a quite auspicious start to this podcast recording, I have to say. But
wouldn't it? Like, if I'm like, hold on, I gotta clean up a pile of dog crap. Give me a minute.
This is why we need our own dedicated studio, pet free. No, it's funny you mentioned that because the other week when we were recording the Stargate episode, while that was happening, I was here by myself. Megan was out, and Onyx, our Sphinx, was like just totally had the zoomies and was running all over the place in the office. And I was like trying to get her to calm down, but she thought that I was like playing with her. So if I got up out of my chair to go like quote unquote chase her, she would think like, oh, like the chase is on, it's time to play, and like would like do that sort of thing. So then like the only thing that I could figure out to do to calm her down would just to grab her and stick her in my lap and just kind of hold on to her tightly. And I squeezed her ever so gently, and she totally crop dusted me, and it smelled so fucking horrid.
Dude,
This is an 8-pound cat, a tiny animal, and God only knows what had to happen for that smell to come out of that animal.
Oh, dude, I know, man. Like I said, this dog is like, he might be 15 pounds. I don't know. He's not very big. He's a little bigger. Remember Sarah?
Yeah.
He's a little bigger than her. Mm-hmm. So maybe like 15 or 16 pounds. He's still pretty skinny. But man, like, he'll get up on the bed and he'll like walk over and sit down next to me and look at me. And the next thing you know, I'm like it's brutal. Man.
Pets.
Yeah,
we love them.
We do, but they are a handful. Like this little fella, he's a handful all the time. What is nice about him, though, is unlike any other dog I've had that like wants to wake up in the morning and go out real early, I wake up, I shower, I do all my stuff, I come back, like I get out of the shower, he's still laying under the bed sleeping.
Love it.
I have to wake him up to take him out most mornings.
Anyway, yeah, but now you're paying for it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
It does all tend to even out. It all comes out in the wash in the end, more or less.
Absolutely. I think what I'm going to do once we were talking about getting a studio. I think once we get better cameras and lighting, I'm going to move into my office to record, and the dog, everybody else will be like out. I won't be recording here in the kitchen area where everybody can see me.
No, we don't want that. I don't want to be seen either, for that matter.
Well, it's just like, she's in the bedroom right now, but if I was in the office, I don't know, it would just make things easier. All right, so where were we? We were talking about Jason Momoa and his crazy eye cut. Yeah,
so scars. Tell me about your scars. Superficial and internal.
Oh God, man, I don't want to open the box on the internals. That's not really a podcast. That's more like a mini series. Scars though, external scars. Well, I got one. You won't be able to see it, but it's like right here on my eyebrow, on the side. I got that. I don't even know when I got that. Maybe 2010. It's a long story, but let's just say that a big wrench hit me in the head, and it's not as cool of a story as I would like it to be. I was working on my little truck that I had at the time that I totaled, and we were trying to pull the front off of it. We were going to try to fix it. And I was on the ground trying to pull something off on the bumper, and actually it wasn't a wrench, it was a crowbar, like a small pry bar, slid off the top, and I just turned my face. I saw it coming, I turned my face. If I hadn't turned my face, it'd have caught me right in the eye. But I turned my head just in time to get split open here on the side of my eye. Yeah. And it left a nice little scar. And then, do I have any other interesting scars? Yeah, I do actually. I got one under my lip, on my top of my lip here. I don't know if you remember I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. I went across the handlebars of my bicycle and ate the pavement. Oh. You remember that?
I do.
Yeah, that was a gnarly one. And
that was a spicy one for sure.
Oh yeah, I had road rash on my teeth. That's how. Oh dude, it was gnarly. It was gnarly. I remember I went to the dentist because one of my teeth were loose, and he was like, "Yeah, that road rash will wear off. It just takes time." I'm like, "Ugh, dude." Seriously, man.
It's not a part of your body you would normally associate with an injury like road rash necessarily.
I didn't even know it was possible.
No.
I was like, "You can get road rash on your teeth?" He was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh yeah, like it's like this common thing that he sees
Yeah,
all the time. Yeah, yeah, it
exactly.
happens all the time.
It happens all the
You
time.
know.
Yeah. Probably the gnarliest scar I got though. I don't. You've seen it, but it's probably been years because I have a beard. Is the one that's under my neck where I got dog bit.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
That was like a long time before I met you. I think I was like 3 when that happened.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it actually goes from like right here. Actually got a place on my cheek where I got it, and then behind my ear, like gnarly.
Mm.
So yeah, I got several really nasty scars. How about you,
But the
sir?
ladies, but the ladies love them.
I don't know, man. I've never been able to be like, yeah, look at this place where I got dog bit. And the
Yeah.
girl's like,
Look at the
oh,
scar. I'm so tough.
yeah. The
I
girl's
actually,
like,
I
blowing
actually,
butt in
I
my shirt,
actually got
like,
this in. Yeah, I actually got this scar in a bar fight. I was defending my date's honor against a creepy man, and you know, he
you
pulled
know,
out a knife. I
yeah,
subdued him, but not before he got me.
yeah, yeah. And you can always embellish those stories, which coincidentally falls into our topic of conversation today: story embellishment.
Oh, you're telling me, man. But yeah, I mean, as far as like scars go, I have like the one on my cheek from when I got a fishing hook stuck in my face when I was a toddler, which as I age is like becoming less and less visible. It's not really there anymore. You can still really see it. If we get ring lights, I think you'll be able to see it, maybe. But other than that, I don't really have much of anything that's like notable. I have like a little bit of I've got a scar on like my hip from when I fell off my skateboard in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard next to the Barnes and Noble once.
Okay.
That sucked. Yeah, I was like trying to be cool, you know, on my way to the farm stores to get like a Mountain Dew and a Snickers bar, and just
Yeah.
just 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 fell on my hip in the middle of the street in the middle of the day, traffic everywhere. It's hot out. Scraped the shit out of my hip. Just like took a bunch of skin off. I was probably like smoking a cigarette while doing it, and
I'm
you
trying to be
know,
cool.
yeah, I was totally trying to be smooth. I probably had like a hat on. My hair was long. Had like a mullet, you know, Jinko
Yeah,
jeans.
that's right. You did have a mullet. I forgot all about that.
Oh man, we're still early enough in this podcast to where we have a rich tapestry of things that we can tap into as we get
Oh
into more
yeah,
and more episodes of this thing. But one of
absolutely.
them one of them being is that I had a mullet until I was in the seventh grade. That's you know it was a choice for young boys in the 80s and 90s to be sure. But by the
Yeah.
time you get to middle school, I think regardless of the year, it's usually a thing that you tend to cut off because even though you're still like 12, you feel like you're too old for it, and you are too old for it. But I did not.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I guess under the right circumstances, people can still rock a mullet. I guess it depends on what kind of person you are and the crowd you hang out with.
I mean for sure. I mean, go ahead.
I personally couldn't rock a mullet. Well, for multiple reasons, I don't have the hair to do so. But if you know, if I did, I might rock a mullet like as a Halloween costume, let my hair grow out crazy, and then do like a mullet for Halloween, and then just cut it off.
I mean, I will say, I live in West Philadelphia, which is a very diverse neighborhood, but it's also full of, for lack of a better term, like shithead punk rockers who like don't take showers and like either have like rat tails, dangly earrings, they smell like patchouli, that kind of thing. They're nice enough folks, I'm sure, but a lot of them do have mullets, and it must work for them. It's not something I personally would do, but they're
I find
they're
that so
back, is what I'm
interesting.
saying.
I find it
Yeah.
so interesting that like grungy punks now in the 2020 are rocking mullets.
Oh
That's
yes. Oh yeah.
that's an interesting hair choice for them, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not even that. It's not even that they're just like lazy and not getting their hair cut and their hair is just growing out. It's like a choice. They're getting their hair cut, whether they're cutting it themselves or like one of their housemates is cutting it for them because they all have like 7 or 8 roommates probably. Yeah, it's an active choice, and I kind of admire the audacity in a way, but not enough to do it myself. I don't think.
I could see that. I don't have it. I couldn't rock a mullet. under any circumstances. I don't think
that part of my life ended when I turned 13.
Yeah, no, yeah. But then you had that really cool like leopard hair where you dyed your hair.
Oh God.
And you had to I think you had to dye it back at some point, didn't you?
There was a couple of times that I had to. So like when I got into 8th grade, well, I guess it was 7th and or 8th grade. My hair was long, but it was like kind of like parted down the middle, I guess. And then I would like bleach it sometimes. But my hair was so naturally dark that often the bleach job would not take, and it would just kind of turn gold or like red.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I remember when you had like orange hair at one point.
Yeah, it was super orange and like so stupid. But you know, it's you know, you're in middle school, you're figuring out what type of person you are. You know, you're changing every day. And
yeah, absolutely.
I was figuring out some shit, and I figured out that I don't need to bleach my hair after a certain point of my life.
I'm trying to remember the last time I remember coloring my hair, and I can't remember what it was. But I do remember helping you color your hair one time.
Yeah.
I think we were in high school. Maybe.
Yeah, I did bleach my hair a couple of times in high school. It was shorter. Like I would have like a short, almost like buzz cut a lot in high school. But I would bleach it sometimes also at that point.
I remember I bleached my hair and I dyed it red, like bright fire engine red. And I went to school, and I think I made it half the day before they sent me to like the principal's office and told me like I couldn't come back in like that. Yeah. So I went home and I bought black hair dye of some kind. I don't know what it was, like an off black. And because my hair was so bright red, when I dyed it and came back into school the next day, like I had like a really dark purple burgundy, like grimace looking hair. And I remember I remember the same dean like stopped me and was like, "Yeah, you gotta dye your hair." And he was like, "I told you could dye your hair." I'm like, "I dyed it black." I'm like, "This is just what it come out like." He was like, "Well," I was like, "Well, nothing. You told me to dye it. I dyed it." And I think I just walked away from that.
Oh, serious power move.
It was a serious power move, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you know, obviously we went to a high school where, like, you know, there really wasn't like that much going on in the sense of bad behavior for the most part. Mm-hmm. You know, so it seemed like the deans were primarily in charge of enforcing the dress code in terms of hair color. Spaghetti straps or like skirt length on girls, like just stupid shit like that, because they had nothing else to do.
I remember one of the deans, I can't remember which one it was, went around with like a piece of paper or something rolled up in his pocket, and like if he saw a girl in like spaghetti straps, he would pull it out, and if it wasn't wider than his piece of paper, he would send them to the office to get a T-shirt or a coat or something.
So weird.
Like he literally carried it in his pocket all the time.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3 times I saw him stopping girls to like, you know, like measure up. Maybe he was trying to like just grope a feel, and it was his excuse. I don't know.
Ugh, that's a disgusting proposition.
It is, but I mean, like he always seemed to do it every day. I'd see him like doing it to some girl in the hallway. And I'm like, is that really necessary?
Yeah.
You know, don't you have more important things to do?
Yeah, we're basically adults. We can handle spaghetti straps and dyed hair and things of that nature. Although now it seems like everybody just wears uniforms. All the students have to wear uniforms to school, even public school, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, you know, and the funny thing about that is, I remember when we were kids, like somebody talked about like, I think it was Mel High. They talked about going into uniforms at one point, briefly. Mm-hmm. And I remember we thought it was like the worst thing in the world. Like we were totally against.
You're totally crushing my individuality.
Right now, like the older I get, I'm like, yeah, I don't know that it's such a bad thing. Maybe in some sense, like some instances, like they've proven that, like I think through studies that like schools where they have school uniforms, like the students typically do better in school.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. I don't know whether it's just because people like they don't have to worry about looking good, so they're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna throw this on and go to school.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's, you know, it kind of puts everybody on the same level, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
You know, on a level playing field.
So I don't know. But then again, who knows? Maybe I'm just getting old.
Well, somebody's birthday is coming up.
Yeah.
Talking about my birthday, of course, folks. Going Commando Pod, December 13th is. I'm just kidding. I mean, my birthday is really that day, but James's is on the 10th of December. We are 3 days apart.
We are. But it's nice to have a birthday buddy.
It is nice. Two Sagittarius kings start a podcast together, and here we are. It's Sagittarius season now. I'm feeling my oats. I'm feeling that wanderlust. I'm feeling that logic that I feel this time of year. Where like everybody's pissing me off, and I just want to like ride my bike across the United States and get away from everybody and like go camp in Yellowstone or something. But I don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but is that your astrological sign, or is it just the fact that it's almost Christmas time?
No. I mean, I choose to believe that it's my sign that is contributing to the way that I feel, and astrology and whatever the moons or the planets being wherever they are. I don't know a ton about it, to be honest with you, but that's what I choose to believe.
I think it's a cool belief. I don't know how much I can put into it as far as like, actuality. Like Danny's got a friend and I love her to death. She's the sweetest person, but she's really into it.
Sure.
She's always posted like, Mercury's in retrograde, so blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
I mean, I think it's nice that, I think it's nice in a way that people can kind of find, I don't know if comfort is the right word or solace, but that they can, if they're having a bad time for whatever reason, if they can point at something like Mercury being in retrograde and say, that's it. That's why I'm having such a bad time right now. And if that makes them feel better, if that gives them reassurance that like it's temporary and that that this too shall pass, then that's fine.
Well, it's funny, like you mentioned that, like, that's why people like to believe in conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Because, it's like anytime there's like some big disaster or something, like right now with COVID, I hear people saying, well, the U.S. government, the Democrats let it out to undermine Trump.
Sure.
Which sounds just absolutely ludicrous for anybody with half a brain. But I understand, I think, why those people attach to it. Like, it's what's going on is so out of their comfort zone that they just can't really fathom it. So something goes, well, the Democrats did this to get Biden elected. Well, that makes it like an enemy.
Right.
So that just it basically just lines everything up in their head and helps them, cope with it and make sense of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's unfortunate that it has to happen that way, but you're totally right. I mean, there's a degree of comfort in having that enemy to look at, to recognize, even if it's skewed, and say like, yes, this is the problem. This is what reality actually is not what's happening, and that's just how I'm going to live my life.
Right.
So.
Right. And I get it. I mean, like I kind of had a moment like that when my mom passed away. I remember like the following year after that, I went down like the conspiracy theory rabbit hole for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was like buying into everything, like hook, line, and sinker, like looking at little, synchronicities and going, that's it. That's the reason, you gotta try to make some kind of like, connection to everything. It has to make sense. So like if you're in a really bad place and your world's kind of spiraling out of control, you got to figure out why, and that gives you an anchor point to think of why it's doing that. I get it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Again, I don't think it's right, and I think people need to realize what they're doing. But who am I to tell them like what to believe in? That's their own thing.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's not much we can do about it. Like the one thing that I've kind of realized with COVID is that you're not really going to change people's minds about any aspect of it, whether they think it's a hoax, whether they think masks don't work, whether they're like super into the idea of quarantining and like not leaving their house, and they want to publicly shame people who do leave their house without knowing why they're leaving their house or what they're doing, without knowing any personal details about their life. People want to attach, and I'm guilty of this too. I'm as guilty as anybody, and I think we all are to a degree. of just attaching some sort of narrative in our own minds to what is happening, because this is just so unprecedented for everybody, to try and make it make sense or make ourselves feel a little more comfortable in this very uncertain and uncomfortable situation that we're all in.
Right. And to that end, as much as I try to, be respectful of other people's beliefs, I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not going to name names or anything because I don't want to do that. But let's just say a friend that we grew up with is getting married and had asked me to officiate the wedding. And this was like a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, absolutely, man, just let me know. Well, this person's now moved to another state, and I'll give you details when we're not recording. But they moved to another state, and they messaged me today, and they're like, we're gonna do this soon. Can you come up? And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, the cases are spiking all over the U.S. Like, it's, plus it's the holiday season. I got work and all these things. Like, I can't just hop off, work and go hop on a plane. I'm not going to hop on a plane.
Yeah.
And fly halfway across the country. And I think that made that person upset and mad and probably hurt their feelings. But, you got to do what you think is right. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, people really be out here still, like, having their weddings and baby showers and things like that. And it's definitely interesting to be in that, to imagine being in that sort of bubble, I guess, for lack of a better term, in terms of just like what's actually happening.
I think what a lot of people do is they're in their own community, they see things from their perspective, and they don't see things from their perspective of like the whole big picture.
Yeah.
Like this person that I'm talking about, they're in a very small town in like the middle of the country right now. I don't know how many people their town's in, but it's a very ridiculously low number, a couple hundred people, maybe like 1,000 or less at the most. So there's nothing going on up there. Like, well, we don't have any cases. Well, yeah, okay, you got 1,000 people. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're pretty isolated. Of course you don't have any cases of COVID right now.
Right, yeah.
So they look at that and they think like, well, there's nothing going on here. It can't be as bad as they say it is.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're pretty isolated. It's really what's going on.
Yeah.
You're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's what happens.
So, anyways.
We designed this podcast to be a distraction, a diversion from the hellscape in which we all exist in, and the flesh prisons that we did not ask to be born into, but are in. This is going to be a relief from that.
And you went dark there. You went dark.
Well, we're 8 months into this thing, and that's just how I'm feeling some days. And I know I'm not alone. So anyway, to kind of reset the table here, this is episode 3 of Going Commando. I'm Bryne. That's James. What are we talking about today, James? What's the movie?
Today, sir, we are talking about what I think is a quintessential 80s martial arts movie, Bloodsport.
1988, Jean-Claude Van Damme playing Frank Dux. This is, to your point, a quintessential martial arts movie. We had a few martial arts movies on our kind of master list that we put together when we were conceiving this podcast. So I'm glad that we're kind of like getting into that and doing something a little bit different versus an action movie with like explosions and people shooting guns and things like that. It's something a little different. Change it up a little
folks,
bit.
We're getting back to that.
We will get back to that, of course. There's going to be plenty of that, but this is something a little bit different, so I'm excited to talk about it. So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
So tell me a little bit about your personal history with this movie, Bloodsport.
Man, I think my personal history with this movie is going to be pretty much identical to yours. I remember growing up, and being like in 6th grade through like, let's say 9th grade. And it was on cable TV on TBS like a couple times a week, every week for like half my life. I don't know if you remember the movies for guys who like movies.
You want them? TBS has them. Movies for guys who like movies. One big, bad, in-your-face movie every Sunday night.
Oh, God. I'm gonna have to find that on YouTube and pull a clip of that. But yes, I do.
Yeah, you're gonna pull that and like insert movies for guys who like movies somewhere. But
Yes.
they played it a lot. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen that movie so many times. It's one of the ones on the list, like we've talked about before. Like, I really didn't need to rewatch it. Like, I
Mhm.
know the gist of it. The only thing I got from rewatching it was little tiny details that I probably forgot or just overlooked. It's, you know, the world we live in now, like, we know, like, I think the average person knows a lot more about actual fighting than they did back in 1988 because you got things like the UFC and everything that's so popular. So now you look at it and the fight style kind of looks a little corny.
Mhm.
Doesn't look it doesn't look legitimate, but it's real flashy and it's entertaining to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the thing that I took away, well, let me first say that you're right. My personal history with Bloodsport is very similar to yours. It was one of those movies that was just on cable constantly, and you could just like pop in. Maybe you caught it at the beginning. Maybe you are tuning in at the middle. Maybe you're towards the end. Whatever. It's one of those movies that I know that movies are still on cable now in a similar way that they were back then, but I just don't think with like streaming and everything that's been going on that it's almost kind of like a lost experience in a way.
Oh,
Just kind of
absolutely.
like just kind of like channel flipping, and then you see like, oh, Bloodsport's on, and it just started 15 minutes ago, or Bloodsport's on, and it's about to end, so let's watch the final fight scene.
Right.
That kind of thing. That doesn't
Exactly.
seem like it doesn't seem like a thing that a lot of people do anymore.
No, I don't think they do at all. I mean, and to that end, there are some streaming services that are trying to give you that experience. Like Shutter, for instance, has brought back Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
So you have the Monster Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, which I thoroughly enjoy. I didn't enjoy
Hmm.
it when I was a kid. I remember watching it when I was a kid, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of dumb. Who is this guy doing all this talking? Like, why don't you just shut up and get back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre?" But now that I'm older and I'm going back and I'm watching it on Shutter, I'm like, "Oh, this is great. This reminds
Yeah.
me of like being 12 years old, laying down in my bed at night and watching a double feature." But good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's funny how those things can change as you get older, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But speaking of Bloodsport, I think this is Jean-Claude Van Damme's first starring role.
I believe so. I mean, it's the movie that made him famous. We can say that with confidence, I believe.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's what put him on the map, which is really funny because I just watched an interview of him after I watched the movie the other day, where he said that a executive told him he would never be a star after watching this movie.
mm.
So the
Well,
executive saw it and was like, "Oh, this is crap."
I mean, I can appreciate this movie for what it is, but like I can also kind of understand it from an executive's point of view, and we'll get into it. But this is very much like a B level movie in terms of plot, acting, everything. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme, give him all the credit in the world. He's a great athlete. He's what, probably 59 at this point. He could still
Oh
kick my
yeah.
ass for sure, no doubt about it. I don't want beef with Jean-Claude at all. But what I will say, to the executive's point, is that one of the most jarring things about this movie, which I didn't necessarily forget, but I was kind of reminded of while watching it, is just that how wooden his line reads are throughout this whole movie.
Oh yeah.
Um, he's not very expressive when he's saying stuff. So yeah, I could understand it from to that degree, but on the whole, that's not the point of the movie. Or
No.
the scenes that he has with the
No.
reporter, or whatever. So
No. And really, the whole purpose of this movie was just really to showcase martial arts and his athleticism. Really, it was kind of the perfect vehicle for him in some ways. It doesn't require a lot of actual acting per
sure.
se. And it was played to really fit his strong suits as far as what he was capable of.
Oh
But
yeah.
that being said, he does read it like a plank of wood in a lot of scenes. But I think he's really fit for that role. He did become a better
Yeah.
actor later on, for sure. And some of his most recent work, like he did a movie a couple years ago where he plays like a survival guy. He's got some people on a beach or something like that. I can't remember the name of the movie. He's actually fucking hysterical in it. He's like spot on comedy in the movie. So he did become much better as he got older.
I mean, I think another thing that he did, to your point, as he got older, is he kind of became a little more self-referential in his roles. I mean, he played that kind of like fictionalized version of himself in JCVD. I think that was probably 10 years ago at this point. But he's kind of like playing to the fact that, you know, he's like this Belgian guy who can't act very well, but is like, you know, can do splits, which we'll get into, can do high kicks, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, he I can tell he takes certain aspects of his life seriously, but it's also very obvious as he gets older that he's okay with like kind of poking fun at himself, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. I think this movie was really cast really well around him to kind of support his weakness. The actress, I can't remember her name. I'm sure you got it up in front of you, so you'll tell me. Who played the reporter? She's
Leah Ayres is her name.
She had really been not in a ton of stuff really, from what I can remember, but she'd done a bunch of like horror movies back in the early '80s, like several horror movies. And she's not great, but she does have a little bit more on-screen magic than he does as far as being a believable actress. Yeah. And then you got like Forrest Whitaker and the other guy who are playing, I don't know what technically they were, NPs or something, who were trying to bring back.
Yeah, it's not like super well established, because I mean basically the way the movie starts is that Dux is escaping from, he's like an army captain, I guess.
Yeah, he's a captain in the U.S. Army.
He's escaping from his post, basically. He's going AWOL to go to Hong Kong and compete in the Kumite, which is the Bloodsport fighting tournament, like this underground, gritty, non-sanctioned fighting tournament. So these two inspectors, or you know whatever you want to call them, they trail after him throughout the movie.
And I don't know how far into Forrest Whitaker's career that was. It has to be after Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yes.
And some of those other movies he did when he was still really young. He couldn't have been more than like 23, 24 years old or so when that movie came out.
Yeah.
And he's very comical in it in a lot of ways, which is kind of interesting because now he's kind of revered as being such a serious, you know, A-list actor in some sense.
Oh yeah, no, he's a super serious, like Oscar-winning. It's interesting when, you know, and this, I think this is going to happen a lot with this show and the movies that we're going to watch, to see these actors and actresses kind of pop up in these movies and these roles where, you know, they're young, a little green, and then, you know, you're not used to seeing them in those roles necessarily. You're used to seeing them in these like big grand productions where they're the star and they're just acting their asses off, and that's not the case here.
No, not the case at all. But like I said, again, I think he's really good in it. The other guy, they do give a lot of comic relief.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a really good scene, you know, where they're chasing him through the streets of Hong Kong. And he's kind of making them look like idiots.
Yeah.
Which I don't.
Yeah, it's like maybe the most anticlimactic chase scene in action movie history. Am I too grand in declaring that?
No, you're right. It's pretty anticlimactic for sure. There's some movies out there that have a lot better foot chase scenes. One that I think we're going to do eventually, I don't know if it's on the list, I can't remember, but I'd like to do Point Break, which I think might have the best foot chase scene ever done in cinema.
Oh, yeah, it's up there. Absolutely.
But no, just, you know, getting back to the movie and just, it's kind of interesting. One thing I do like that they do really well is they seem to do a pretty good job of showcasing different fighting styles.
Yeah.
You have the one guy who you see win a couple fights and then goes up against Van Damme later and loses. And he's got the Thai boxing shorts on. He's like a white guy with a buzz cut, or not a buzz cut, like a flat top, and like a goatee, I think. He's got the Muay Thai fighting style, like the Thai fighters. He's the only one I see in there that's got that fighting style, which I kind of feel is a little weird, considering how close they are to Thailand, and those guys are monsters when it comes to fighting. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they got that, and then they got the one African-American guy. I don't know what fighting style he's trying to what they're going with, but he's kind of acting like a. Can I say it? I don't think I can even say it.
I mean, I was gonna bring this up and ask you what you thought about it, because when I was watching this is a part of the movie that I did not remember. Seems pretty racist, because in the opening kind of montage, and this movie is full of montages, despite the fact that it's only an hour and a half long. There's a quick scene of the aforementioned African American male who's training to fight, and he's on a tree branch, like chopping coconuts. That's a little rough, I think.
It does come across a little rough, and I don't know. I'll be honest, I didn't look into this. I think there is a fighting style that is based off of kind of a similar premise of, being fluid and being on the ground and kind of rolling around and attacking from a ground position.
Yeah, but they couldn't have a white guy play that part.
No, I feel like
Apparently.
well, I mean, again, we're talking 1988, so I mean, I get it, I guess, but I feel like that part could have been played a little better. At least they could have showed the dude walking around like normal, but I think every time you see him, he is like crouching down and rolling around. There's really no other way to say it. He's rolling around like he's a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
I think they could have given that character a little bit more respect, just a tad bit more.
A little bit, yeah.
It does kind of come across as a little racist for sure. I think what they were really trying to do was more so show that the Kumite was a diverse tournament. You didn't just have some Taekwondo or karate guys. You had this very, very wide berth of different fighting styles.
Yeah, and to your point about that, I was immensely entertained by Ray Jackson in this movie, as I always am whenever I've seen it.
He is great in anything he does, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ray Jackson is played by Donald Gibb, who you may know as Ogre from the Revenge of the Nerds movies. I think that's his most famous role, other than Bloodsport. Can you think of anything else?
I can't think of anything else I remember him. Well, I remember him in other movies, but the only other kind of notable role I can think of was he was in an episode of The X-Files.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I think you're right. The Ogre in Revenge of the Nerds is the only one I can think of.
Yeah. So he's kind of ends up befriending Dux as this tournament is going on. And he, it's a total like kind of. I think they could have done like a little bit more with this, like their relationship, because it doesn't feel like towards the end of the movie, and we'll get to this, but when Ray's in the hospital and Dux goes to visit him, and they have that very tender moment between the two of them where he's like,
So you stomped him real good, huh, Frankie?
Worse.
What do you mean?
He made him say Mate.
All right, Frankie. But don't you get too cocky, because you might have to go up against me next time.
I promise.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are out of your minds.
I'll drink to that.
By the way, next time you fight, try to keep your clothes on.
Anytime, any place, anywhere. If you ever need me, I'll be there.
I love you, my friend.
Me too. Take care.
anytime, anywhere, I'll be there for you. And they like say that they love each other, and like Dux kisses him on the head. And it's like they've known each other for 2 days at this point in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say
it doesn't
like,
feel it's a nice moment, but it doesn't feel super earned, I guess.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, I guess the most you could say is that you could say, well, maybe they were there longer than we thought. You know, maybe it was spanned out over a week or so. But I mean, legit, it looks like 2 days when it's filmed on camera. And, you know, they do a really good job of trying to, like, establish a friendship at the beginning.
They do.
When he runs into Hong Kong and they're playing video games together. It's a nice little scene. It kind of establishes them being friends. I feel like they could have cut the scene at the end, though, or made it much less emotional.
I mean, I guess in the director's or writer's eyes, they wanted to, have that scene in to kind of humanize both characters. And you know what? I do think it does play into the final match. That emotional aspect does kind of help. I just think that, if I'm using my my actual brain here, not my action movie brain, if I'm using my actual brain, I just think like these guys just met and they're already like head over heels in love with each other, which is great for them, but it's not super believable. But very little about this movie is, and that's ultimately not really the point, I guess.
No, I agree. I'm pulling up something because I wanted to look at a name. I wanted to have the name in my so I could actually say it. Yeah, you're right. I think in the 80s there had to be getting revenge for like a fallen friend, brother, wife was a really common theme in the 80s. It still is, but getting the revenge for the friend or the brother has kind of taken a much less role in most action movies now. You typically only see revenge movies revolve around like wife and children now.
Yeah.
Very, very seldom do you see like, oh, my friend from high school died and I gotta go get revenge for him. I feel like they kind of probably felt like they had to shoehorn that in there.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say about it, the thought that I wrote down while I was watching it that I had was that it felt like and maybe this is just on my brain because we watched Starrcade the other day. It felt like a pro wrestling angle almost, where you have Ray Jackson in his fight with Chong Li, who is the main bad guy, the main bad fighter in the movie. Totally gets decimated by Chong Li, gets embarrassed, ends up in the hospital, and Dux is having to be held back, which is another funny thing because earlier on in the movie we meet Mr. Lin, who is kind of the what would the word be? I guess the guy who's bringing in Dux and Jackson into this tournament, the liaison for them, basically.
Right.
And he's like this like tiny little man with a mullet. He probably weighs 100 pounds. And the idea of him holding back Jean-Claude Van Damme from getting into getting onto the platform and stopping Chong Li from murdering Ray Jackson in front of him is pretty silly. But the plot needs to happen, right? It's plot armor, as you like to say. And it does kind of play out like a pro wrestling angle where, Ray gets taken out. He basically does a stretcher job, to use a pro wrestling term, gets in the hospital, and then Dux has to exact revenge for his best friend against the bad guy, and ultimately he does.
Yeah, and I think to that end, it is definitely a pro wrestling angle. It's something it sounds like something I would see in WWE, where Randy Savage was avenging Hulk Hogan or something of that nature that they used to do back in the 80s quite regularly. So I think it fits, but I mean it fits, but it feels like it was shoehorned in there a little hard. Let's say it like that. Like I get it, I like the fact that it's there. It could have been put in there a little bit better to make it not feel so jarring. Because it doesn't, when you, at the very end, like you said, where like they're having that embrace, he kisses his forehead, it feels really weird.
So getting back a little bit to, I guess, Ray and Dux' relationship, and I guess really to your point about that, I think it's a little weird that even though, they kind of became fast friends and, looked out for each other during this tournament, that really the whole reason that Dux is even in this tournament is to honor his trainer, Senzo Tanaka. And that kind of gets thrown by the wayside almost basically the second that he befriends Ray.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he does say, I think at the very end when he wins, like he dedicates the win to Tanaka's son.
Yeah.
And kind of does that, but it is all a little strange the way they do it. It could be worse. It could have been done a lot worse.
For sure. I mean, I will say that to kind of walk back my point just like half a step, that there's a very elaborate training montage towards the beginning of the film where you kind of see Dux and Tanaka training together for the Kumite, and a lot of that training ends up, working for Dux in his match against his fight against Chong Li, and we see flashbacks of it where he's got the blindfold on.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I wanted to bring up that made the final fight feel like such a pro wrestling angle is that Chong Li has got the it's like a tab or something in his shorts that he like breaks up and like throws in like blows into Dukes' face. Total heel move. Total heel move.
Yeah, total heel move. And I don't know what that was. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could make into a tablet and break up. One thing I will say for Chong Li is that was kind of brave, because if it burns your eyes that bad, I would imagine if it dropped down your pants, like it sets you on fire.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we don't know what kind of underwear Chong Li was wearing while these fights were happening. We never got to see that. We only got to see Jean-Claude's underwear and his butt cheeks very briefly earlier on in the film. But
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite shots in the film, by the way, is after Janice and Frank have their love scene. It's just so. I think it's the only example that I can really think of. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but it's the only one I can think of right now that is just like gratuitous male nudity in an 80s action movie versus gratuitous female.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm not going to get into all the points he made, but while I was watching this and I was looking up other stuff, I come across a YouTube video where a guy was talking about Bloodsport. And one of the things he talks about is how there's a very BDSM type scene in the training montage where he's got him up on like the trees and he's like stretching him apart.
Yeah.
And he talks about how that's done a lot in Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and I didn't remember this, but it is. It was done in Kickboxer. There's been several of his movies where like these training scenes that are done with these really kind of barbaric training methods are done.
Yeah.
And they talk about how in a lot of his movies, he's the only one that gets naked or almost naked. And it is kind of weird. They were pointing out the fact that, maybe he was poking a jab at, hypermasculine, sexuality and everything, because some of the stuff he does in some of the movies might be perceived by some people as being a little bit gay. I don't know if you remember in Kickboxer, there's a scene where he's drunk and he's dancing in this little bar, and he does a split and he's doing like a butt like hopping off the ground twerking type move.
Sure.
Which back in the 80s, early 90s was kind of interesting to see. But it was this really kind of sexualized dance that he was doing that might come across to a lot of people as being a little homosexual. And he was kind of thinking that maybe Van Damme was kind of poking fun at that. And then he said,
possibly.
I don't think he was, though. And I kind of agree with the guy at the video. He also points out that like every chance he gets on television, at least up until recently, he would like to take off his clothes. Like he'd be on an interview. It's like there was a video of him in an interview of some kind of ladies thing, and he takes off his shirt and starts dancing.
Yeah. Maybe
he's just a little bit narcissist, or was a little bit narcissistic.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly possible. I mean when you look like he does and you're a movie star, it's an understandable conclusion to draw. I mean, yeah, and again, he's Belgian, so it's a different philosophy. He's not American. For the most part, European countries have a much more, I guess, healthy relationship with, masculinity, femininity, and it not being so binary, so black and white. So, yeah, I don't know.
It was just an interesting point that the guy in the video pointed out, and I'd never really thought about it like that until he brought it up. And I was like, yeah, he's kind of making a point there. It was a little bit interesting. Talking about supporting characters in the movie, the one I wanted to point out was Chong Li.
Yes.
The guy who plays him, I can never say his last name. His first name's Bolo.
I think it's just Bolo Young, I believe.
It's Bolo Young?
I think so.
He's a super interesting character when it comes to martial arts movies. Yes. He was around way back in the early 70s.
Yeah, he
like Bruce Lee
was in Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, he's in Enter the Dragon. Yep. He was also, and it's pretty evident from his physique in the movie, but a lot of people don't know, he was like a championship bodybuilder.
Wow, that makes sense. I mean, he's a gigantic, extremely cut, huge man.
He is a gigantic, extremely cut, huge man. I like how you put that.
Yeah, I'm very eloquent. That's why I'm the host of this podcast. So thanks everybody for listening.
I like
Yeah,
it.
he's a big guy. He's got big muscles.
He's a very big guy, but he's really good at playing the bad guy.
Yeah.
I think in almost every movie I've ever seen, he's played the bad guy. I'm sure that, acting, in movies that were based out of is he Japanese? Is he? I'm not sure.
Oh, you're reminding me of King of the Hill when he first meets, the episode of the first episode of King of the Hill that Khan is on. He's like, are you Chinese or are you Japanese? He's Chinese.
Dang. I didn't mean to come out that way. I don't know, where he
No, I know. I'm just busting your bees a little bit. It's all right.
I guess my point is over there he was probably an action star, probably did a lot of protagonist, hero roles, but everything you see him in that's made for like the U.S. market, he always played the bad guy.
Yeah.
If there's one role he did where he was a good guy, I've never seen it.
Yeah, me either. I mean, and it makes sense in a way because again, he's a big kind of formidable opponent for even someone like Jean-Claude Van Damme, who's like a big guy in his own right, a muscular guy, but definitely much smaller than Bolo Young for sure.
I don't know, man. I really, as much as this movie kind of didn't age as well, I really enjoyed watching it.
I did too.
Do you want to recap the movie before we go into the part about maybe the actual avidity of this movie?
I mean, I think we've covered more or less like most of the stuff that I want to cover. I mean, there's like a few scenes that I like. I like the, we talked a little bit about the video game scene with Ray and Dux. I think I like that because I thought that Donald Gibbs played it very well in the sense that when you first meet this guy, he's like this big kind of like scary looking. He's like an ugly American stereotype basically because when we first see him, we see him on this trolley and he's like drinking a beer on the trolley. He's got his legs splayed out on the seat in front of him. He's trying to hit on a woman, and but then we meet him and he's still like kind of like unsure of Dukes in like the first couple of lines that they have together, but eventually become best buddies, and that's kind of the main, I guess, friendship or relationship of this movie. So I like that. I like the little nuance there because he's like a big dude also, and it would make all the sense in the world for him to be an opponent for Dukes as well, but it ends up being the opposite, which is nice in a way.
It is nice in a way, and to your point, I honestly think he was more cast in this role because of the I'll be honest, I think he's flat out a way better actor than Jean-Claude. Especially at this point, I think he really comes across as a much more likable character in a lot of ways than that Van Damme does as the lead. Because he comes across more normal. He does have. It seems like he's got a little bit more charisma. He's a much more likable character. His lines, he doesn't read them like a plank of wood. He's he's a lot more fluid and he's got more depth. I don't know if you could say that about him now versus, if you could compare them now. I don't know who's a better actor. He's probably still a better actor, to be honest.
Probably.
But I liked his character. I thought it was a good character, and I like that they didn't put him in there and shoehorn him in as like a secondary bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie's not long enough for a second bad guy, really. It's not like a Spider-Man 3 situation where we need like 4 villains for some reason.
Right.
I also really liked the scene with the quarter, which is not long after the scene that where Dukes and Ray first meet in the bar with the I guess he's an Egyptian guy, an Egyptian fighter in the tournament.
Yeah. You come upstairs with me for an interview.
Like hell, let go of me.
You want Hussein, no?
No, Hussein is an asshole.
What did you call me?
You want me to spell it out for you?
Leave the girl alone. He's the American shithead who makes tricks with bricks.
Guess the Kumite starts one day earlier this year, huh, fellas?
Look, guys, let's all just calm down, okay?
She's coming with me upstairs.
No, I'm not.
If we have to fight for her, then both of us would be thrown out of the committee. Just for her? We could arrange this another way. Do you gamble?
What is bet?
You hold this. If I can grab it before you close your hand, I get the girl. If I cannot, she's yours.
Very good.
What? You can't do this.
Just relax. Take it.
Oh, geez, Frankie, I hope you know what you're doing.
Ready?
Go. Ha! You lose, American asshole.
Looks like she's mine. Now leave the lady alone. You understand that?
That's also kind of a stereotype, maybe a little bit racist by today's standards, but that's kind of where Janice gets introduced also, because the Egyptian gentleman is accosting Janice at this bar, and Dux comes in for the save, and that's where we get the kind of like romantic sparks that first start to fly. But I like the scene where, you know, he basically puts a quarter in his fist, and he's like, oh, if I can grab it, I win. But if I don't, then she's all yours.
I think what's really cool about it is he moves his hand, and the guy thinks that he's closed his hand. He thinks that he beat him because he can feel the coin in there. And then when he asks him to open his hand, he's actually swapped the coin out, which is like super impressive. It's actually kind of unbelievable, like, unless he's a magician. Like, there had to be some sleight of hand going in there. Like, nobody's that fast that they can swap a coin out like that. It's just, I don't think it's possible. But it's cool. It looks good.
I guess beyond that, I mean, another thing that I wanted to bring up is just how many montages are in this movie. For a movie that's so short,
there's a lot.
There are so many. Not just the training montage that I brought up earlier, but just it's like such an 80s action movie trope, and I love it. But I guess, you know, to our point earlier about Jean-Claude Van Damme and his acting prowess or lack thereof, I guess maybe, you know, inserting a lot of montages into a movie where he doesn't have to actually say anything is one way of kind of working around that. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good possibility. I think a lot of his movies have a lot of, especially his earlier movies, had a lot of montages in them.
Yeah.
You know, like going back again, Kickboxer, stuff, things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's probably a really good way of covering up his weaknesses.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just thought it was interesting because, you know, I was so used to watching this movie on cable in bits and pieces. I hadn't seen it front to back in a very long time. But I will say, I texted you about this actually. The score of this movie I think is fucking fantastic. I love the music in this movie. I don't know what it is. It's so great. Like just like totally like coked out, big synth, 80s percussion, like overproduced, like just like the perfect 80s action movie or martial arts movie music. And it really does a good job of setting the mood. I think that I said, what did I say? I said, I was like, I think I said that the score totally fucks. Is that what I sent you? Something like that?
That's exactly what you sent me. And at first I was like, Jimmy sucks? Like, I've never heard anybody use that term, like, you know, in a good way. Yeah. So I'm like, did you mean sucks? You're like, no, I meant fucks. I was like, okay.
So yeah, that was one aspect of this movie that I didn't remember very well before we were watching it. I was really entertained by the score of this movie and also the splits. Let me ask you a question. Can you do a split right now?
Oh, fuck no. Are you kidding? That's not even a no. That's a fuck no. Can you?
No, I cannot.
Okay.
But this kind of started the whole Jean-Claude Van Damme doing splits in movies. He because this is the movie that kind of put him on the map, as we established. He did splits in Kickboxer. He did splits in Double Impact. I think he did splits in Hard Target.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he did one in Hard Target. He might have.
It kind of became his thing.
Yeah. Oh, Time Cop.
Signature.
He does. He does the split on the counter where like there's that weapon that gets thrown in there. Like I don't know if it freezes. I can't remember what it does. But he jumps up and like kicks his legs over like on the counter side to hold himself up. Totally unnecessary. Like you could have just jumped onto the counter, like leaned on one side, propped your legs up, but no, hopping up and doing the splits and putting yourself in this really precarious position.
Yes, like if you have to like run away from somebody who's shooting at you, like you don't want to be in that position, split on the ground or split anywhere, really.
No. But it, again, it's one of his aesthetics. Like he looks cool doing it, and he can do it. And I mean,
yeah.
What was it? Less than a decade ago, he did the Volvo commercial. Have you seen that?
I think so. Yes.
The semi commercial where he's standing on the mirrors, and they start to drive the trucks apart till he's in a full split.
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection. A pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics. And a mindset to master the most epic of splits.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows?
And they're driving it like that's how they're doing it. Well, I thought that's got to be fake, right? Apparently, at least this is what Volvo and Van Damme say. It's 100% real. I'd like to be able to confirm that, but in a press release, Volvo said it was real. Van Damme says it's real. So I'm assuming it's real. Which if it is, that's the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen.
It's super impressive. I don't know how any person can be that flexible. I certainly am totally incapable of doing that. I consider myself to be like, for a guy who's like, knocking on the door of 36, I consider myself to be in like okay shape. But I cannot do a split to save my life. And I do have these long dancer legs. But you see this? You can see this on the Skype call. That's as far as my knee can bend. I cannot bend my knee any farther than that. That's absolutely as far as it'll go. Anything else than that, and I will start screaming. So
I bet.
so that's where I'm at this point in my life, unfortunately. But it's okay.
Dude, I get it. I mean, I'm not very flexible. I need to get in better shape for sure. I know I'll get up in the morning sometimes and I'll lean forward to stretch and I'll feel my lower back like popping. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's the best.
Oh, it's gonna be a good morning.
You know what happens to me? I mean, this is obviously I grew up in Florida where winter's not really a thing, and you still live in Florida. But this is, I think, my 9th winter up north, or is it my 10th? It's either my 9th or my 10th. But what has been happening to me as the weather starts to get colder in recent years, and I just noticed this recently, also this year, is that the second it gets cold and I'm outside, my knees start to hurt like the fucking dickens, like totally aching, throbbing pain, just because it's cold out.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not smiling at your pain. But that's the first time I've ever I was about to say. I think that's the first time I've ever heard anybody say like the fucking dickens. That's.
Man, I tell you what, I was on a bike ride last weekend or the weekend before, and my friend and I rode out to Phoenixville, which is about a 25-mile ride from here, from the city, and
So
we were
you did
riding
50 miles round trip.
Well, we didn't quite get there, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that when we were riding back, it was dark out, and this time of year, it's not quite winter yet, and like during the day, it's like it can be cold, but it's it's like fine, it's like not that bad. But the second the sun goes down at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock, the temperature just drops. And we were riding in the dark, and my knees were killing me. And we were still like probably like a 2.5 hour bike ride from home. And we had a few beers. We brewery hopped, which I'm sure didn't help. And we got to there's a train station in Norristown, which is probably about an hour ride from Phoenixville. So we'd been riding for about an hour on our way back to Philadelphia. And I was just like, we got to get on the train here. We have to stop. I cannot do this today. So we did. So it was so we took the train home. It was fine. But yeah, that was a real come to Jesus moment for me, where I was like, I'm still pretty capable and I can do a lot of things, but I don't know if I can do that, and that's unfortunate. But it's all right.
And the thing is, what would probably have helped? I don't know what you were wearing, but they make like knee braces that have inserts to put those hot hands. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
That probably would have been like a lifesaver for you.
Yeah, maybe. I was wearing like skinny jeans. I had my bike shorts on under my skinny jeans, so my ass was totally comfortable. So I had that going for me at least. But yeah, I was really in a world of pain. It was really unfortunate. I just gotta start. I gotta start bringing some ibuprofen with me, I guess, when I go on these long rides, because my knees cannot handle it this time of year.
Oh, man, you know what though? That's just part of getting old. I mean,
I know.
I wake up. I have issues where I'll wake up and this is gonna sound really bad, really really bad. So just you walk with me on this one. I'll get up in the morning because my neck and my back, I got some pinched nerves going on. I'll wake up and my hands will be almost numb.
Yeah.
And if I squeeze, they'll hurt. Typing when I first go to work in the morning is unbearable. So the first thing I do in the morning is I get up, I take a hot shower, and I stretch in the shower. When I get dressed and go to my office, the first thing I do is I pop some ibuprofen and Tylenol. The first thing I do. And then normally by about 10 o'clock in the morning, my hands are better. Dude,
yeah,
it sucks getting old, doesn't it?
That does sound pretty bad, man. I gotta say, I'm a little concerned about you now.
Honestly, I don't think it's anything serious. I think it's just I have a garbage neck. You'll see me when we're sitting here talking, I'm constantly stretching my neck, and you can't hear it because you're so far away. But when I first do it, you'll hear
I believe you.
You'll hear a pop.
Yeah.
And if I rotate my head around, I feel stuff kind of sounds like a pepper grinder.
Sure. Yeah. So someone's just just doing one of this. Adam Sandler on Saturday Night Live is just doing this to you, more pepper, but it's your head. It's not a pepper shaker.
I've thought about trying to get into some more yoga. I think I told you we were doing some DDP yoga.
Yeah.
And that helps, for sure. The problem is, man, is nowadays I don't feel like it. We wake up, I go to work. By the time I get off, we got to run a bunch of errands. So by the time I get home, it's 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's the struggle for sure. Yeah, the time commitment is almost like the biggest hurdle to cross. I totally understand it. So I don't blame you.
It's hard. I got to do it though. I got to start getting in better shape. I'd like to be able to do the Jean-Claude Van Damme splits. Never gonna happen.
So that's a goal we can set for each other, right? So by the time we get to 50 episodes, or maybe we do whenever we launch our Patreon, we do we'll do a splits competition or something at some point, where we could just try to do a split and hopefully not die, or I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but
I don't know, man, because I don't if I end up on the ground, I don't think Danny can help me up if I have to go to the hospital.
Well, we don't want a hospital visit, so we can talk about it off air, but just something to think about. So you had sent me a bunch of articles about Frank Dux, the real person, because for those of you who don't know, Bloodsport is. Go ahead.
Before we get into that.
Yeah.
Let's rate the movie, because I don't think the movie should be. I don't think anything we're about to say about him should spoil anything about the movie rating, because the movie is on its own has its own entertainment value.
No, for sure. You're right. I mean, like, you could watch this movie and never know that it was based on things about a real person, and just enjoy it on its own merits that way. So yes, you're right. Let's give it our fists rating.
Okay.
And why don't you go first, buddy?
I always go first. I think you should go first on this one.
Oh, come on. Who's the host of the show? You or me? I'm just kidding. We're co-hosts.
I was going to say, wait a second.
So Bloodsport, I think I'm going to give 3 fists. I was very entertained by it. I really like Jean-Claude Van Damme in this role. I think he's super charismatic, despite the fact that he's like very clearly not a great actor. But the movie does enough to play to his strengths. I think that it works. And I like Ray. I thought Ray was great. And I loved all the fighting scenes. And to your point earlier about it of the Kumite kind of highlighting different styles of fighting, I thought that was a nice touch. Because you see Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's like this martial arts master. And then we meet Ray, and he's basically like a brawler almost, which I thought was a nice little wrinkle. So I'm gonna say 3 fists. What about you?
I'm inclined to agree. I'm going to go 3 fists as well. I think that, to your point, I like the fact that they really tried to show, different forms of martial arts and showcase that. I think they could have done a better job at it, because everybody except for like 3 people really come across as just being like karate guys. And there's way more forms of like martial arts out there. They could have showed a lot more of that. But, all that being said, I think the fight coordination is really good, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. I find that odd, knowing what I know now, that it looks so good. The cinematography on it and the way they do the fight scenes is very good. And even though it's a pretty simple story and kind of lacks quite a bit here and there, I think the fact that it's simple actually makes it better. I think if you tried to make this a longer, more thick, dense movie, I think you would just kind of lose the point of it, of what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a fun, quick action movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the point that I made a little bit earlier, like to me, it's kind of structured like a pro wrestling storyline. At least that's the way that I interpreted it. And pro wrestling storylines are often very simple, very black and white. There's a conflict and there's a resolution. And that's kind of the way it goes. And even if it's obvious and the ending is obvious, if it's really well done and well acted and well choreographed and well put together, it's still very entertaining to watch, even if you know how it's going to end. And I think that's the case here with Bloodsport.
I agree. So 3 fists.
3 fists for Bloodsport. So with that, let's talk about
Frank Dux.
Let's talk about the real Frank Dux. Well, the real Frank Dux, please stand up, because you sent me a bunch of articles and I didn't know anything about this. I had no idea this. Like, I had never seen like the ending freeze frame of this movie. At least I don't remember ever seeing it. So I had no idea that, or at least I just forgot that Bloodsport was at least loosely based on a real person.
Right. And by loosely, I mean very loosely. So yeah, I was watching it, and I remember when I was a kid watching it on TBS, one of the times that they showed it, they made an event of it, and they had the real Frank Dux on there. And they had the host, and like he was breaking some boards and talking about his career and everything. Sure. He's kind of a taller guy. He's like about 6'2", 6'3", had like the Magnum PI mustache at the time, and kind of like the 80s Tom Selleck hair going on. He talks a really good game, but when you start scrutinizing his story, it really starts to just fall on its face. I don't know how far you dug into him. I went down the rabbit hole on him quite a long ways. So, just quickly, he's a Canadian-born person. I was losing my words here. He was born in Canada, but for some reason, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And he was in for maybe 3 or 4 years, and he was discharged. He states that on his military record that he was in Korea and Vietnam. Not the Korean War, but he was somewhere in Korea doing something, and he was in the Vietnam War. Which is
he
funny.
Was not in the Korean War. He was just in Korea one time.
Basically, he says he was in there for like a conflict, some kind of Korean conflict. Then he states he was in Vietnam. But the funny part about it is the Vietnam War was actually officially over before he enlisted.
Oh, I see.
So, not sure how he ended up in Vietnam. He also makes claims that he won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Yeah. He's got a picture of him in military uniform. But they were talking, like, one thing I was watching talked about how his medals were out of place. They weren't where they were supposed to be. And his Congressional Medal of Honor had around his neck is actually the one that they give U.S. Army recipients. So not a Marine Corps Medal of Honor. They're different, apparently specifically different. And when asked about why he had a medal that would have been awarded to an Army soldier, he said, quote, "The government never told me why that was." And that's all he said. He totally just dispels it by like, well, they didn't tell me.
Yeah. The
guy is quite the character. It's really interesting though. What did you look up? Let me hear what you read.
I mean, I'm looking at the this ranker.com thing that you sent me. So the headline of this, and this is from earlier this year, it's from April. The insane story of Frank Dux, whose life allegedly formed the basis for Bloodsport. So, and I'll read the brief little lead here. If you thought Bloodsport was dramatic, wait until you hear about the story that inspired it. Bloodsport allegedly tells the true story of Frank Dux, a martial arts expert who claimed to participate in and win a kumite, an underground secret fighting tournament. If the story behind Bloodsport sounds straight out of fiction, you might be onto something. You see, whether or not the events of Bloodsport are real, Dux has a tendency to exaggerate stories about his own career. Dux claims to be a legendary fighter with several world records, but only he can verify them. He also says he worked as a covert operative in the 80s and was offered a contract to take out another famous fighter. The whole story, regardless of its validity, is just as engaging, if not more so, than Bloodsport itself. And then it kind of goes into this just completely fucking insane list of just pathological lies that Mr. Dux has made about his life. He claims that he was offered $25,000 to kill Steven Seagal, for one thing.
Yeah, I love this one. Dux claims that he sold his prized sword to save orphans in the Philippines.
Yeah, and then I love the photo that's attached to this, which I guess is from his official Instagram, and it's like a photo of him. It's like a very blurry, shitty photo of him like meditating on top of a statue, I guess.
Yeah,
and it's got like this bad Photoshop like text job on the top where it says "Quiet meditation unleashes the soul's true courage, Frank Dux." So he's quoting himself on his own Instagram, which is very bold.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I'm going on a little forward here. The next one here says he was not impressed by Van Damme's athletic abilities.
No.
I will say this.
How could you be? I mean, it's not like he can do a split or anything, for one thing.
I'll say this, like Van Damme's athleticism is, especially back in like 1988 to like 1990 something, the early 90s, was really kind of unparalleled as far as action stars go.
Oh yeah, off the charts.
Like you think of action stars back then. I can't think of too many more that had the type of athletic ability he did as far as like being able to jump, flip, roll, kick, do all these things. This flexibility. It's just it's so funny. I like this. Here he is talking about Van Damme. Says Van Damme wasn't exactly flexible. He was very stiff. He had a karate background, but I mean, he couldn't do a forward roll when I first got him. He freaking landed on his head in front of all my students. Are you kidding me? I mean, he couldn't do a throw. It's really funny that he just kind of bombs Van Damme out. I went and I looked up some video of him fighting in a tournament back in like the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And it looks like a couple little kids, like sparring on the park, like on a playground, where one of them knows a little bit of karate. That's kind of what it looks like. I don't know. I don't want to really talk about it because, according to him, going on down here, he explains how he worked for the CIA. So, I mean, I don't want to talk about him too bad. He might come kill me.
Yeah, he might.
I find it really funny, though. I was looking up into the CIA thing. The CIA, because, I'm sure you've heard this before, lots of people claim to be a CIA operative.
Yes.
It's a pretty common lie because the CIA won't release a statement about it. So you could essentially, as long as you didn't make crazy claims, say you were in the CIA and they would never even admit, like if somebody like sent them a request that you were ever there. So you could get away with using that lie for quite some time. The CIA officially released a statement about Frank Dux. And I'm paraphrasing what they said here. They said that they thought that they had to release a statement about Mr. Dux because of the extreme outlandish nature of his claims. And in the statement, they stated he had never been, nor will he ever be, a member of the CIA.
Oh, that's just what they want us to think, though, It's
Yeah,
all a ruse.
Maybe so.
They want to keep his cover for when he goes back undercover to I don't know. I can't even make a joke about this. I don't even know what he would go do.
Oh, if you look down on that Ranker article, it shows the different Congressional Medals of Honor down there. So you can see the difference in them. I don't know which is which. I couldn't tell you that, but it shows you that. It's his whole claim about, and that was another thing, like the Administrator of Athletics or Commission of Athletics for the Bahamas, which is where he claimed he competed in the Kumite. Went on record and said that there's no possible way that a tournament like that has ever been held in the Bahamas due to the fact that a tournament of that nature and size that he claims wouldn't be able to be kept secret.
Right.
He also claimed of having this incredibly astounding record, which apparently changed. Initially, he said it was 321 wins, like 7 draws, and 1 loss.
Yeah.
And before the movie came out, that was changed to 329 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws. Because if you look at the end credit there that pops up, that's what's shown on there. But he actually was at a martial arts expo in the 90s and got in a fist fight with a kickboxer and got his ass kicked in front of a bunch of people.
Oh, man, I would love to see video of that.
I would, too. His claims, though, when he was asked why he lost is that the gentleman he was fighting hit him with brass knuckles.
Oh,
and then concealed them quickly enough that nobody else saw it. I think we could do a whole podcast about this guy, really.
I think we could, too. I think we need to get him on. I think we should try to get him on as a guest.
Yeah, I doubt he'll do that, especially if he listens to this one right here. I like this part down here. It says his fight record is impossibly impressive.
Impossibly, yes.
Yeah. It says, however, fight experts say that his knockout record alone is impossible to achieve because he claims to have had 56 consecutive knockouts in a tournament. Just start thinking about those numbers.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, first and foremost, can you imagine fighting 56 people in a tournament? No,
I can't imagine fighting one person, but...
I'm just saying, if you had to fight somebody, you could barely imagine fighting one person. He states in one tournament he fought 56 people. Those numbers are just insane.
Yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah, it's none of his claims seem to be possible at all. I like this one. The organization that holds the Kumite seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, it seems to have disappeared. It's almost like it never existed.
I can't remember exactly what it was they were talking about. One of the videos I watched was talking about how he said for his world records, there was an organization. I'll have to look it up and see because I can't remember what it is. But they had the record, right? Conspicuously, though, their mailing address was his home address.
This guy rocks, I think. I think I'm starting to like him, actually. I admire the audacity.
Well, okay. So I was watching a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he was talking about fake martial artists from the 80s and 90s. And he pointed out the fact that back then, you could make outlandish claims. There wasn't the internet to, go prove anybody wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this guy got away with, he made this claim in the 80s, whoever he'd made this claim to thought it was good enough to write a movie about it or loosely based on it. He was the fight coordinator for the movie and several other movies. He was able to keep that lie going until probably like the late 90s. So he held that thing for like 15 or 20 years.
It's not a bad grift if you can get it.
Apparently not. I mean, he made a career out of it. He's got several dojos. He goes around and gives like these speeches at karate schools. It just seems completely ludicrous to me.
And they do kind of like allude to it at the end of this movie when they kind of show like the freeze frame and kind of explain like what the movie's about. They do kind of call into question his claims, even in the movie.
Yeah, I guess they kind of do a little bit. But do they though? They kind of just give his numbers out there and say it.
Yeah, I mean, I forget what it said verbatim, but it was something along the lines of like, oh, we can't like verify the validity of these claims or like something like that. But
I wonder if that was added into the movie later, because I don't remember that on the original one.
Yeah,
like I watched it on Netflix. I don't know where you watched it.
I watched it on YouTube TV with very jarring ads every few minutes.
Oh, okay. So I watched it on Netflix, and I don't remember that being at the end of the one I watched on Netflix. I wonder if it's on the YouTube one only.
It's entirely possible. I mean, who knows with all these different versions of different things. We ran into this with James Bond also, so.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I'm going to maybe do a little bit more research on this guy, because his claims are just so crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. But I didn't know any of that before I watched it. I don't remember anybody ever saying anything about the validity of it, of all of his claims being questioned or anything. And I remember I watched that, and what caught my eye was I was reading his numbers again. I think the last time I watched this movie, I was probably like 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I read that, I was like, 329 wins in 5 years? Wait a second. So that's when I went down the rabbit hole, and I was sitting there like watching the movie, Googling stuff, and I essentially was like, we got to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
Because these are just crazy numbers. And the further I went down, like, the rabbit hole with him is just, it's pretty insane. Like, the claim that he sold the sword that he won from the Kumite to get money to pay pirates to release these captured Filipino children.
It's like one of those things where we've all done this to some degree, but like you tell like one like little lie to someone to impress them or whatever, and then they try to call you on it, and then you have to end up telling like another lie on top of another lie to cover up for your first lie. That's what I feel like is happening with that specifically. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's definitely like a cover up lie, but I just kind of wonder, like, where does somebody get the audacity to make such outlandish claims? And then how did anybody in Hollywood just blindly just like eat that up without trying to fact check anything? That's a really good question. I mean, fact checking when you're making a movie like this doesn't seem like it's on quite the top of the totem pole, I guess.
Right. But like so you go, like, say right now, I was to go out to Hollywood and I had this crazy story about how I had been like, here's a good example. You remember that guy that wrote that book? He was on Oprah. It was called A Million Little Pieces.
Yes.
James Fry, I think was his name.
I think so, yeah.
So it was this crazy book, and he basically, was talking about his addiction. He was this crazy drug addict and all this crazy stuff, and how, like, he went back and basically got clean and sober. Well, come to find out, it was all fake.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to keep that lie going for a little while. We're talking the 90s, like the late 90s. But he was eventually found out. I feel like before, like, a studio would want to make a movie, spend all this money and be like, yep, this is based on a true life story of Frank Dux, they want to do a little bit of checking on it. I mean, I would think so, right? I mean, you couldn't get away with this now. There's no way.
No, not at all. Like it would instantly be, not instantly, but people nowadays do their homework for sure.
So I think we got to come up with a new rating scale though for grifting. What do you?
I mean, as far as Frank Dux, this is a 5-star, a 5-fist grift. I think. Like I can't think of anything better other than maybe Donald Trump's presidency.
Ooh, yeah, that's
and all of his minions.
Yeah, it's true. I will say this: I feel like his grift is a 4-star grift, and here's the reason why. A really good grift needs to be self-sealing. Like it needs to be containing to where nobody can wash out and erode the foundation of it. And his was like that until the internet.
Yeah.
But it's like he built in no type of like fail safes for his lie. Like he thought at no point is anybody ever going to check my outlandish claims. Mm-hmm. And then the movie blew up, got really big. I'm sure he made millions off the movie because he did interviews and stuff. I'm like when I was looking him up on YouTube, there's thousands of interviews with him, like on Sunday Morning Edition at like KRP News or something like that.
Right.
And like all these seminars where he was going to, I'm sure he got paid for. So he probably made lots of money off of that. You would think at some point he would be like, man, I got to figure out a way to really seal this off.
I got to get my story straight, or maybe I don't because nobody's apparently checking.
I think like he could have easily sealed this off if he'd have like kept his numbers a little lower.
Yeah.
If he said I competed in a tournament in the Bahamas with 50 other fighters, okay, all right, sure. That's a little bit more swallowable. What was your record? I retired with a record of 20-0. Okay, all right, I can eat that. That's pretty reasonable. You know, a lot of MMA fighters now retire at like 17-0, something like that. So that's a totally believable record.
Right.
But his claims are just so astronomical that there's no way that you can really just give it any validity to it.
I agree. Well, to everybody, we will see you in a couple of weeks. We've got some fun stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media. Going Commando Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. You can also email us if that's your thing. goingcommandopod@gmail.com. And be on the lookout because we've got some plans, and we're going to do them. Come hell or high water.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Signing off.
Bye.
On fire, I'm gonna push it over the wire. Perfect timing, tight as a drum. You find the battle's already won. I'm taking hold of every moment, given strength by the breath of life. I'm gonna stick